All right, welcome to our second week of AI summer, everybody. Welcome back. Hope everybody had a great graduation on Friday. It's great to see you all again. And today we are going to be jumping into AI assisted programming. And so this will be an excellent week. At least the first 2 days will be an excellent week for people who are in particular beginners who have not really seen Python before, or maybe you haven't used Google Colab. For people who are kind of advanced, if you've had maybe a couple classes, maybe one class in Python, maybe this isn't the day for you, but you can stay and check it out for sure. But otherwise, just would love to start with any questions that you have. Otherwise, we're just going to jump right into programming. All right, excellent. So I am going to go ahead and send out once more the repository for AI Summer. We're going to be working super heavy from here as we have been thus far. Oh, let me go ahead and so let's go ahead and get that one opened up. Just as a side note, as we're navigating over there, so today we will be doing some live coding. So this is something we'll be doing together, and I would definitely encourage you to participate in that. In a moment, you'll see that we have some different notebooks, so you can code in one, and maybe if you get a little behind, we'll take a look at the other one. But do participate. The second part is we will also be using a lot of reactions today, as well as for the rest of the week. And so please do participate in that. It helps me get a good sense of kind of where people are, how people are feeling. And I'm interested to see what your thoughts are in general. So super excited you're here. And let's go ahead and pop right on into AI Summer, that repository. Let me open this one right on up. Again, if you don't have Google Colab, it's going to be a little bit of a rough day. So just try to go ahead and sign up for that with your Google account. And also we will be using ChatGPT today pretty extensively. If you have something like Bard, or you have access to something else that works with code, then you can also use that as well. So let me go ahead and just share my screen. Share screen. Ooh, it's always hard to figure out exactly which one. All right, let me see. Let's go with. Yep, that. All right, is everyone seeing something? A repository, AI Summer, looking familiar? Great. All right, let's just make that a little bit bigger. All right, so we are actually going to start by just directly going into Google Colab. Okay. So let's just go ahead and go there. And so as we were saying before, right, there are two notebooks here that we're going to focus on. There are these 0 notebooks. They're the exact same notebook with a few differences. So clearly they're not the same exact notebook. But what we see here is one has the solutions appended, and the other one is a workbook. So we won't be doing that much like quick coding today, but this is the one you'll probably want to use. Again, if you fall maybe a little bit behind, or maybe you just, whatever the case is, you can always go to the solutions notebook so that you can just catch up as we go along. Same thing as last week, this will be recorded. So if you do fall a little bit behind, we do have the solutions, but also we will have the recording. All right, so here we go. We're going to start by clicking on this one. So this is just the repository. So right, you can see the actual full notebook here. Exciting. But the thing about this notebook is we can't interact with this at all. Like, we can't run anything, we can't execute anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open this in Google Colab, and we're going to use this badge right here that we're just going to click on, and it's just going to redirect us right on over there. All right, so it's reactions moment. We're going to get it popping from the beginning. Thumbs up if you have made it to this page. All right, things are looking good. Wow, we are moving this morning. Great. And again, if you take a look at this notebook, you will see that it is an introduction to Python for sure. We are in this era of generative AI. So we do want to have some background in Python, but again, take a look at it. If you think, you've been here, you've seen this a little bit, then please feel free to hop off. Come on back on Wednesday or Friday. All right, so here we are, okay? And so in terms of the learning objectives for today, what we're really trying to grasp is using Google Colab in general. So what is Google Colab? Yep, it's this whole big thing that you're looking at right here. It is this platform that is truly online, so it's cloud-based. So again, when you upload data to here, that means it's going to be somewhere in the cloud. That is impactful for some of you, but this is cloud-based. It has the backing of a number of GPUs, also TPUs, I think are available, and also CPUs. So your compute here is provided by this thing that's provided by Google Colab. Okay, so Google Colab is not the only way that we can access Python. There are many, many different ways. This thing that we're going to be looking at here is called an IDE, or integrated development environment. This again just provides us a nice face for us to interact with Python. A second piece, the thing that you're looking at here specifically, you don't see like a big black screen with just like a little blinking cursor at you. This thing right here is a Jupyter notebook. So you can see here that we have some like written things. This is not code, this is like markdown. And so what that means is this provides us the capacity for literate programming. What does that mean? It means you don't have just straight scripts that just have comments in them. You can actually, guide people who will come back to your code and wonder what was going on. So you can now have this markdown to guide people. Okay, so introduction to Colab. We're also going to start we're going to begin understanding what Python is. We're going to start experimenting with it. And we're going to have some exploration of Python in general in terms of the foundational elements so that you can know like what you were looking at. So I think what we saw on Wednesday, whenever people were actually generating some code, is that Python generative AI is pretty solid, given the right prompt and maybe a little bit of interaction. But we did see also that sometimes it will generate some errors. And so what we want to do today is really give you a foundation in just what you're looking at. So when you get that code back and maybe you run it and you get some error, you can have some intuition about where you can expect to be able to solve whatever that error is. We do know that we can put the errors back into ChatGPT or what have you, and it can help us out. But in the case that it doesn't, we want to give you a sense of what to look at and why. All right, so that's where we are. So let us start then with an example. Okay, so this is our example. Let's say that we have this email. This comes from a data set called 20 news groups. As you can see here, we have this header here, and we have the body of the email. And let's say we have lots and lots and lots of those. So what we are after here is we want to get all of these individual components out of each and every single email. And we also want to be able to have a list of all the bodies of the email. So we want to be able to access all of this in one big block and all of this in another big block, or at least be able to access these individually where they're linked to any specific email. And so again, just to rephrase that a little bit, we have like, I don't know how many emails are in this. I think it's like 799 for this particular one that I've been looking at. We have 799 of these things that look sort of like this. They have these different headers and they have some text. Okay, that's what they look like. And so what we want to be able to do is maybe, I don't know, across all of the text to be able to figure out what the main subjects are or when they were sent. And we want to know across all the data set or across all the emails, what the general like text was. And so to do that, that means we need to compose a data set of all of these fields. And we're going to start by working on this particular one. So imagine that you have like infinite interns, okay, but they're like arranged in such a way that they're just like one really big, powerful intern. They don't know much, but they know some things. They're not great with data. And so you are trying to tell them how they are going to take these emails, how they're going to extract and organize this information and this information in whatever tool that you're most familiar with. So my brain honestly would go straight to Excel. If I didn't, but it would go straight to Excel, but there's other things that people work with. So think about exactly what you would tell your intern to do if you had this need. How would they organize this header information and how would they organize this body information? And so we're just going to take 5 quick minutes, talk with your breakout room about that. As you recall, we do have these breakout room documents, and they are in the repo here. You can scroll right on down, and you'll be able to click on these to get to your own room. So for example, let's go ahead and start by clicking on this one. When you're assigned to your room. Oh, and nice. Thank you all, team, for putting this up at the top. But here we have these breakout rooms. And so this is your first question. Just go ahead and copy that into your individual room with the people that you're working with. Again, someone share your screen, chat about it, and then write a list of instructions that you would have for this intern to arrange your documents. So let's see. Oh, and I didn't ask anyone to, would someone mind creating these breakout rooms? Let's see.
Yeah, I have them ready. 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. That is perfect. Oh, something's in the way. All right. That's sounding really, really good. So in the meantime, let me see. In the meantime, actually, we can talk more about Google Colab just in general. So this thing, again, like what we said, this thing right here is Google Colab, right? So we have seen two really nice components of Google Colab. One, we see this thing. So what I just did there is I just double clicked. And so what this is, again, this is the markdown. So this adds a level to be able to, investigate and write in formatted code. And then we want to execute it, Shift Enter, and that executes them. Otherwise, there are other ways to execute as well. All right, and so we can see here, you just type in whatever text you like. Actually, right now, you can do that yourself and give it a try. We will come back to the code cell, but just keep in mind, again, this is a really great format for a Jupyter notebook. Again, you're working in Google Colab, but I think our breakout rooms are ready. So let's go ahead and hop out into them. Again, what you're doing, you're talking about how you're going to tell your interns to format this email text here so that you can process it later. All right, let's head on in for 5 minutes.
This is looking good, Shara.
We'll see how it goes. Let's see how it works.
Yeah. If we could sort of do a breakout room on helping people sign up for the APIs, because we got the email from Audrey, I responded, but it's like people are kind of confused about sort of how to get to it. Maybe a last one or do one or offer one is like a breakout room at the for lunch. Yeah, I'm sorry, for the 11 to 12, we'll do the okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I've renamed a room called API help. So people can join that if they need to.
Okay, great.
We can
And
do
you're going to
Hangouts.
be joining the, is it today?
No, it's on Wednesday.
It's almost, okay, right, got it. Also, I just wanted to mention, last week, it was during everything, but Claude introduced a 100,000K context model, which would obviate the document store.
Huh. How did they do that?
I don't know. But we should definitely try it out. And does anybody know how good Claude is for programming? I've done a little bit.
I used it a little bit. It was fine.
I remember it being pretty good. Like there was a time that maybe we preferred Claude to ChatGPT.
Yeah, definitely to ChatGPT. Maybe toss it between GPT-4 and Claude, something like that. Okay. I'll be looking into it more, but yeah, 100K. I mean, that is like multiple. That's huge.
Is it already available?
Yeah. Well,
Like, can I get it through Poe? Because I have Poe's subscription, so I can use Claude Plus.
I will check.
Okay.
And sure, if you're good, I'll sort of dive into those things. I'll be here, but if you need me, just let me know. But it sounds like you got this. You're like,
should be pretty good.
yeah.
I do remember that I introduced no one, so I'll do that right when we get.
It's the second week. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
Okay.
It's there. Claude 100K is there.
Okay, awesome.
We only have 100 messages per month. How they do?
Okay, do we want to go ahead and close the breakout rooms?
Oh, I just realized I was sharing that whole time. All right, looks like we're filtering back in. Welcome back, welcome back. Let's see, right now I'm just looking at some of the responses. And they are looking pretty good.
There, so a quick comment, Ms. Bell. We didn't have the same groups. So last week we had the same people in the same groups, but this time it was like totally different groups.
If you aren't part of a special group or haven't prepended your name with another group, you probably end up in a random group again. But if you do want to be in a specific group with someone else, you have the ability to move around.
I think it might help with being a cohort. I mean, last week for the 2 sessions we had the same people, but yeah, maybe that was just random because it was like alphabetic.
Right. Yeah, it was alphabetized, so I can move people around.
I guess there are pros and cons to have same group versus different groups.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you got to be able to meet with different personality, which is good too.
And the big con is it's really hard to reinstate exactly the same group across meetings. That's the biggest con. Technically, it's almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that we are all back. So I realized that I jumped right in. So I'm Charo Bell, the senior data scientist at the DSI and the director of the data science minor at Vanderbilt. I'm joined here by my team, of course, like normal. So this is Jesse Smitzer-Smith. You can see him here. You heard from him a lot last week. He's the chief data scientist at the DSI. I'm also joined by Miranda, who is a senior data scientist, and Umang, who's a data scientist at the DSI, and then Abby, who is our postdoc here at the DSI. So if you need some help, if you need, you need some correspondence, please feel free to reach out to them. They're also here to help. Also, if there's anyone here that is like don't know, just hanging out, although they're super advanced in Python. There are questions that pop into the chat that feels like something that you can answer. Please feel free to help your colleagues. All right, so now I would love to hear some of the responses. And I see one that I really want to hear from in particular that I'm looking at. But let's see, anyone in particular want to respond? And maybe we'll take maybe 2 or 3. All right, that means I get to call in my target group. All right, let me see, room 9. Room 9. Would someone mind commenting on that? Let's see, who was in room 9?
I can do it. I can comment.
All right, that sounds great.
Yeah, so we just said, Excel is the first go-to that we had. We could, assuming that these data headers are similar across the data set, we could map the each of the colon separated items in the header into a separate column in Excel and have a row be the data unit essentially across the board, and paste the text of the body text of the email into a final column essentially.
I think that sounds great. Other thoughts? Anybody choose to use something other than Excel?
This is the faculty group. This wasn't my idea, but I'll just speak for what we discussed in our group. We weren't necessarily thinking about the tools, but just with regards to the different divisions of the way we parse out the data. So the email, like the subject, the sender, it looked like it was maybe a listserv. So capturing just those different buckets and making sure those were the discrete categories. And then the body, we had a lot of discussion about, do we just group the body as body, or is there additional work we need to do with the body itself? And that was the general discussion amongst the team members in our group.
I love that. And so in thinking about the body, are you thinking that you should separate, was it like separate these paragraphs, or was it pull out the sender? What were y'all's thoughts?
With the body, we thought this would go a little more advanced in the LM space, but even thinking through like the intent and any action items and things like that. But we knew we couldn't do that with just like the basic tools that we had. So we figured that was going to be another round.
I love that. That sounds great. Let me see. I see another hand, Omar, and I think this will be our last person. Thank you, Dr. Yaf. Omar?
So what we did is we thought that we could make a function that would look at the subject, the headers, and all of that. Then the way that we thought about it is that someone found that we could use the regular expression operations library, which had a parse and dictionary method. And then from there, you could use a for loop so that every time there's a colon or a certain word that you're looking for, like subject, you could split and start recording that certain email or certain subject.
I like those programmatic thoughts as well. So it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like your interns, minimally, they will iterate over every single one of those documents. And then within any given iteration, they will pull out any of the individual given keys. So that would be like subject to, I don't know, message ID or whatever's in there. Pull out those keys and then add for each of those keys a value, which is whatever the value of it was. So to, I don't know, John Smith or whoever have you. So it sounds like you're pulling out keys and values. They're all going to be linked together under the same sort of header, sort of data structure. And then separately, you're going to pull out the actual text of this email, the body. So I'm 100% with you there. It sounds like iteration, data structure with keys and values for the header information, so you can look them up. and then some field which will reflect the actual email body. I am 1000% with you on that. And actually what you described was the basic. So if you were the basic comments that one might decide to put on some code that one would write. So iterating over a bunch of documents, that is literally a line of code in Python. Arranging something into a dictionary, which is key value pairs. That's another thing that you do in Python that we're going to look at. And then adding things to lists, that's a data structure in Python, and that's another thing that you do in Python. So conceptually, you're already there about what you would do. Let's see and explore how we might do that programmatically using Google Colab. So here we are back into, let's go back to our Google Colab here. Nope, that's not the right one, I don't think. Let me try again. Made it. All right, here we go. All right, so y'all did a great job with that. Let's check out Google Colab. Okay, so what we were saying before is that we have these markdown cells, literate programming. Let's go with Google Colab and Jupyter Notebooks within Google Colab. We can execute or render a markdown cell by clicking Shift Enter. And so this is a markdown cell. There are actually lots of different kinds of cells that you have in Google Colab. This first one is just showing us this formatted text. This other one here, okay, this is a code cell, right? So you can see that these little pound signs, they're looking a lot like comments, cell comments, and they always like to be just like green. And so what we do to execute one of these cells is we click this arrow here. We're going to run it. Something that you're going to see over here is now we're actually connecting to something. Okay, what is that? So in this moment, what we can be thinking about is we've connected and created this Python kernel. What is that? That is like sort of like your intern's brain a little bit. So you can think about it as having a built-in set of things that it already knows. I noticed no one was like, hey, I need to teach this person how to use Excel. I need to teach them how to type. I need to teach them how to do that, this, that, and the other. That's because you assume that your intern already knows how to do certain things. This is also true in Python. Python will, by default, already know what certain things are and will already know how to do some certain things because it is a programming language and it has these particular components associated with it. So now what you've done is you started up your little processor in the background, and it's containing all the little pieces of information that you give it. And it's so there's going to be a lot of me describing this as like it's a human sort of behavior. It's not human, nor is your generative AI. But I describe it like that because honestly, conceptually, it helps me as well. But anyways, so there's this kernel in the back. It's going to contain all of your objects. It's going to have some predetermined functionality that's given to it as a function of its programming language. And then you're also able to give it additional pieces of information, like when you were saying that you would tell your intern to create these particular cells in their Excel file and telling it what to put in there. So things it already knows, things that you have to tell. This code cell, this is how you're going to tell the Python kernel how to do things. This is how you're going to put things in its processor or in its little brain. Every time you click one of these arrows, it puts information into the kernel for processing. This right here feels like nothing happened because actually these are comments. So this is just something to help us as humans when we go back and look at it in 3 months, remember what in the world we were doing in the first place. Okay, so this executing comment, you can also, a code cell, you can also do Shift Enter on it, do the same thing. I like a Shift Enter because it's right there from the keyboard. Okay, so now, okay, there are lots of different ways to actually like work with Google Colab. You can mount Google Drive, for example, which means you can access your documents. There's a cool thing called Scratchpads. There's variable explorers. You can also connect to a different runtime. So like you could connect it to your local machine in your lab if you wanted to, but these are some of the awesome pieces of Google Colab. So talking more about the Python kernel. So we just said that by default, there are things that are built into your intern or that they already know, or that information that Python will already know because of the way that it's designed. And one of these things, for example, is just the straight calculator functionality. It is a computational engine calculator minimally. And so we can see a little bit of what that looks like. And very quickly, I see a question, Michael.
Yes, I think I just you may this is maybe a future topic, but since you're talking about it can mount to the Google Drive, I guess in general, when you have this collab, if I create a file or read from a file, where that file right now, if you don't connect to the Google Drive, where that file is actually.
I am obsessed with the fact that you just asked that question. So looking over here, this sidebar, it's awesome. One, you can click this one. This is all the stuff that we're going to talk about today. These are all the organizations of the headers. So we're going to talk about all this stuff today. If you get a little lost, the headings are organizing your brain. But beyond all that, we have this little folder down here, right? This is our working space, essentially. If you were to right now take a file from your computer, drag it and drop it right here, you would be able to access it through code, through like a file directory. But when you close your runtime, so this thing right here, once you close it, that file will just be like casually gone. So it'll be as if it was never there. When you open up your next Google Colab runtime instance, it won't be there at all.
Okay.
However, if you mount your Google Drive is something that is like persistent, right? It's a Google Drive. Anytime you go and get on it, there it is, right? And so if you were to mount your Google Drive and save that same exact thing into your Google Drive, then you could literally get on some other browser, get on your Google Drive, and it would be right there. When you came back to Google Colab, no, your Google Drive would not be mounted, but once you mounted it, you would again have access to that file. So the data that you see here, anything that you put here in this runtime is not persistent once you close this.
Got it.
That is a good question. Thank you for asking that question. All right, closing this one on back. So talking about some of the functionality of Python. So it's just gonna firstly be a calculator. You can think about it as that. It already knows some data types. So when you add 7 and 7 together, it's not like 7 plus 7. False or something like that. It already knows that 7 is a number, and it can add them together. We also see that it knows like strings. It can do certain operations with strings, and then it can also navigate some other different types of data types. If you happen to remember C++, adding a float and an int together back in the day, it was a little bit rough. Now we can navigate those things without casting them in Python. You can see here that this is like some functionality that we do. We want to run this, right? We want to execute it. So that's something that we can do in our code cell. We also add this print statement. So printing is a function, and we'll talk more about that later. And it is printing the result of 7 plus 7. This one is printing the result of this string concatenated with this string. And then here we can see another print statement where we see the effect of adding things together. So what do we just learn? Okay, Python already knows certain data types, got it. Certain operations with certain data types, got it. Printing to printing out, got it. All right, awesome. So actually thus far, okay, we have not actually put anything into Python's quote unquote brain or in its memory. All we have done is compute with it, essentially. So what we prefer to do is use these variables to represent certain numbers. And also the variables are variables. So we can use them to represent certain values, and then they can represent other values as well. And we'll get to what that means in a second. But purely, we can create these variables. There are rules about how you can name them. But beyond that, you can name them sort of what you want. As a general rule, we are human beings, we read. And so when we read certain things, it helps to name your variables, be reflective of whatever you're using them for. You can see that we have this value and we store it into this variable, this integer. And then we can do that with a number of different data types that we have already discussed. Now we run this, okay? So the difference between this one and this one, we just did not see anything here. All we saw was this check that made us like weirdly feel good about ourselves, but we didn't see anything really happen. Here we did see something happen, but the reason we saw something happen is because we printed it out. Here something did happen, okay, but let's check it out. So number one, we can see this dir. Dir is going to show us things that are in the kernel. So we have some different things. This is some Pythonic things. This has to do with the kernel itself, inputs and outputs. But there we see in Python's kernel, some objects that we have created. So we just now put those in there. You don't see anything like that up here because there's nothing we put in memory. We only operated it, okay? So here we see that we've put things into memory. We can also print things out by just directly just putting the name of the variable at the very end of your code cell. And so that will just print it out. And so that's another way to see the value of your data. So again, what happens? We assign these values to our variables. Once we run them, and only then it is put into memory so we can process on it later. Here we can see it being put into memory where it previously was not. And then we can see that we also can recall the value of that variable. Quickly going through this, you should take a look at this, but Python also has lots of math operations that it already knows how to do. We've already seen some addition and we can see some other operations here. So the Python reference API, that's going to tell you the things that Python already knows. So here, another example is it already knows about what's comparisons. It knows greater than, less than. So for example, we know it returned greater than, less than. And we can also see, if we can remember what float was versus integer, that this value is indeed greater than this value. We also print their equality or inequality. They are not equal, so we get this false. False is another data type. It's called a Boolean. And then inequality, we can see that it's true. More built-in functionality, explore that as well. It will help you. And I know that I'm going over this kind of quick, but again, this is something that is going to give you background in what you're looking at when you get things out of your generative AI platform. Okay, so we just talked about a lot of stuff, right? We talked about integers. We talked about some operations that they're able to do. Now we're just going to have a little moment, okay? And we are going to explore some code that has come out of ChatGPT. So let's say that we decided, after we thought a long time, and we had our infinite interns, we thought, okay, we're not going to use our infinite interns this way. We're going to actually turn to ChatGPT and we're going to ask it to produce this code for us. And so maybe what you say to it is that you have literally this exact email. Sorry, I'm scrolling. It's making you seasick. Sorry. So you have this exact email, you have this exact format. And maybe what you say is, hey, I have this exact email. What I want to do is I want to extract all of this information from the header, and I want to extract this information from the actual body of the email. I want this stored as a list in particular, so I can iterate over it. Okay, and then maybe ChatGPT gives you something that looks like this back. So now, thinking of ourselves in that scenario, we want to have some understanding of what generally is going on here. We don't have to know the minutia of every little piece, even though that is something ChatGPT can help us with. But we're trying to gain some intuition on what this thing is. So let's say ChatGPT gave us this back. So now we're actually going to head back into our breakout rooms. And I did set this to be 10 minutes, but it could be that you need a little bit longer. And if you do, please feel free to send us a message and we'll extend it. But what you're going to do is you're going to interact with ChatGPT, okay? And generally actually, let me just do an example. So question number one, okay? Question number 1 is going to help you to understand the overall purpose of this code. And what are the two main sections that contribute to it? Because there are two like major sections of this. And so what you can do, again, we can just double click. What we can do is actually copy this. Right. So based on the following code, perhaps. So maybe you can use this prompt or maybe you don't, but whatever you choose, please feel free to put that also in your breakout room document. I have a what are the two major components? And then just paste it in. Then from there, you can actually, once it has that code, you can ask it the following pieces, these following questions. So maybe actually, maybe the prompt is, I have a bunch of questions based on the following code. Here's the first question or something like that. But yeah, again, paste your prompt and we'll see what works best. But your major goals are to figure out these things about the code, okay? So there are two major parts of it. We just talked about variables. You want to identify some variables that you might think are variables here. We have not talked about data structures, but this is going to be your first foray into data structures. Ask GPT about the data structures that it has represented in this code that it generated. Also ask it about what conditional execution is and where it can be found in the code and what it does in code. So if that's sounding really unfamiliar, great, because we're going to talk about it. Also, the functions used in this example, it's a really interesting question because there's lots of functions, but there's also a main function. And then if you happen to have time, the thing is when you're usually programming in Python, you tend to group ideas together. And so like these two lines form like an idea. All of this forms an idea and all of that forms an idea. It's just the degree of like complexity of that idea. So ask it about any of these individual lines that you have or any big chunk and just kind of explain what each group section of code does. And it's okay if you don't get to 6, 7, and 8. Otherwise, if you see any pitfalls in that, or if you have any questions or ChatGPT tells you anything crazy, please put that in your breakout room document. All right, so I think we can set this one to be about 10 minutes. And then I think when we come back, we'll have a little discussion and then take a little brief break. All right, I think we can hop into our breakout rooms. Let's see, I'll stop sharing. Let us know if you have any questions. And Borislav and Lily, are you guys having trouble getting into a breakout room?
Yes, my internet connection is bad, so I get out of the room.
Thank you. Does anyone need help getting into a breakout room or getting back into a breakout room? All right. All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry, I was distracted there by looking at the breakout room documents for a second. Things are looking really good. It looks like you guys had some great explorations. I think what we'll do though is a lot of what we'll do in the next hour is essentially go through these questions in depth. So let us actually come back in about 6 minutes at 10 o'clock, and then we will discuss the breakout rooms a little bit further. Does that sound good for everybody? Does that work? All right, I'll see you back in 6 minutes. All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. All right, welcome back, folks. All right, we're filtering right on in. Welcome back. All right, I'm going to start by sharing my screen again, and we will start actually going through these breakout room questions while actually reviewing the actual code. So let me pull out the right document once more. There we go. Good. All right. Okay, so we were here. And again, what we're going to do is we're actually going to step through these questions as we step through the code, executing it on Google Colab. So let's do that. So the first thing we need to do actually is get this data. We could go to the top of this and actually get the code that was written, but not the code that was written, but the actual email document. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the actual data set and get it from the web. So I know that most people actually need to access documents. So we're going to talk about one way to do that. We saw earlier through a really great question that what we can do is if we have documents on our own computer, we can literally click and drag them over to this particular window, and it will be in the runtime for us to access during this session. But then when we close this, it'll be gone. We can also use Google Drive directly. You can mount your Google Drive and then use the file path to access it. You can also use the Google Drive API, but here we are just going to access the website and download the data. So here you see something interesting. Here we have a code cell as normal, but we have this exclamation point at the beginning. And what that exclamation point means is we're about to execute a command line function like in Bash. And so this is curl functionality. And basically it says, hey, go grab this thing off the web and store it in my current, in the current directory. So as we said before, we can run this one. You can see it's downloading some things, downloading. It's pretty exciting. Downloading. Oh, it's going pretty good. Things are looking great, but I thought we said that we were downloading it into the current directory. Sometimes it helps if we do that little refresh. So now you can see here that we actually got this tar file or this tar archive file right into our runtime. So this is something that we can access. And so the way that we're going to access this data is another command line function. And we're going to untar this, meaning that we're going to try to get the data out. And so we can run this one. You can see it's doing a little something. What is it doing? Yes, it is untarring. We get our little check. We don't see it here, so we're feeling a little bit awkward, but we're going to refresh, and there it goes. So this is our 20 news groups. This is a very standard NLP data set. This is 20 news groups straight from the source. And if we are to look at this, what we'll see is lots of different news group folders. And the one that we're going to be looking at is actually in this sci.med. It's not going to show us all up. There we go. And we're going to be looking at exactly one of these files, which is this 57110 file. And if you look at it, you will see that that is exactly what we were looking at before. All I did there was just double click, and it showed me this over here. So thumbs up if you have successfully downloaded this file and untarred it. All right, things are looking good. Things are looking good. So this is like super long, and it's not really providing us much information. What we can do is when you get into a situation like this, is you can actually come over here, and this will turn into a little X. You just click the X. And so what that does is it actually just removes the viewing of the output, although it's not like any of your files were deleted. So it just means like, I don't want to see that output anymore, and you just don't see it, even though whatever, if you created an object or whatever you executed there is still remains done. It's not like undo this, it's just remove this output. Okay, so here we have the data that's accessible to us. And now we're actually going to start like pair programming live coding here. So now our task is to actually read the data in so we can actually run this code this thing is written for us. And so what we're going to do is we already have the document. We're just going to go ahead and create our variable. We're going to just use the variable name email fname. And what we're going to do is we're just going to point this to as a string. So it's the string. And so what we're going to just enter is the file path. So we said we wanted 50110. Okay, so here, this is exactly this. And again, this is in our runtime. Once we close this, this is all gone. We'd have to curl and tar again when we opened up another session of Colab. So here we just have created a variable, which is storing this information. And now what we want to do is actually read in the document. So what we saw above is that it actually, we were provided some code to do that, which is this. So I'm actually just going to directly grab that. Come on, right on back down. I'm going to paste that there. Oop. Now, in working with ChatGPT, did anyone did anyone get any advice from ChatGPT about this particular line of code? About reading in this data, particularly about document.txt. All right, it looks like maybe no one has said them anything about this document.txt, or you're feeling a little bit shy. I'm actually looking into a breakout room document. It looks like at the end of some people's interaction, it says that you should replace this document.txt with your own file name. And that would be correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this string with this string.
Oh, and Charlotte, looks like Kate has a comment. Or now Jasmine does.
Okay.
Yeah, the comment I had was just that it suggested that we have error handling just in case the input wasn't in a bad, just was missing or something. So
that is, thanks ChatGPT. That's awesome. That's a great suggestion.
The one that I was having was essentially discussed that if the input is not a valid file, there should be additional handling for that as well. So it's similar in error, that it's error handling as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that is absolutely perfect. So yeah, that's great suggestions. It's absolutely correct too, because what happens if this is not there? And if you okay, so actually let's just run this. We'll just run it as is. So this is why it suggests that to you. If it doesn't find the file that you're looking for, it'll just throw an error. So error handling will help you deal with this scenario. So what it said to me originally was that I need to replace this with my actual file name. And so I'm going to replace this with this, except for we have this variable that we could use instead. So that is what I'm going to use, email fname, and it is going to open this and read it. So let's run this one. And again, what we can do is type Shift Enter. Oh, it didn't like that.
It's because
I think it's
news
with an
groups.
S. Right. Yep.
Man, we got some coders out here. Thanks. Better than me. All right, fantastic. What excellent coding. Actually, let me just take that one out real quick. Someone, why did you what made you say that that was the error?
I can say it. I ran it before you did, and then it said that file name wasn't found. So then I just assumed I typed something wrong, and then I realized I typed what you typed. So then, here we are.
Perfect. Also, this error, right? Exactly what you said. The thing about Python is it often does give you good errors. When you get into some APIs, they don't give you good errors anymore, and you have to like track things down. But it absolutely says, hey, I don't have that, directory, and it doesn't, because it's news groups, not new groups. Perfect. Thank you guys so much. That was awesome. And please feel free, like if you see something that's going wrong, just unmute and tell me. I appreciate it. No shame. All right, so here we have this. And so now we're almost there. We've read in the file. Let's see. Here, now we're just going to add the rest of the code that it gave us. So, and this is it. So I just copied and pasted that for you already. So we're going to execute this one, right? And so this means that now this process document function is available for us to use in the Python kernel. Do we know what it does? If ChatGPT told us, or if we have like understanding already, but what we have done is just made this available for us. And then we saw at the very end, ChatGPT or whatever was telling us to call this function that we wrote on whatever, to call this function that we wrote on the document string. And that's the thing that we just read. So we'll pass that in, and then we expect to get out of this function that we pass in this document string, we expect to get two values out, the header and the body. And the reason that we know that we have to pass something in is because here we see this variable that we do pass in, and here we return two values. And so those are the ones that we get out. So
and
we can.
Omar has a comment, I think.
For the error, the way you fix it is you right click on 57110 and then you select copy path for the files, and then you copy and paste that and you'll get content / so just make that as email the F name instead of the 20 news groups, and then it should work.
Love it. This is a great way to also access as well. So he said, right click on this and then copy path. Always nice to get things directly from the source. Thank you very much. And then we also want to make sure that that will be a string. And so we're going to enclose it in the quotes, quote string. Also in Python, there is no palpable difference between double quotes and single quotes, except for if you are enclosing a single quote and a double quote, that is the way you have to do it. You can't enclose double quotes and double quotes or single quotes and single quotes. All right, fantastic. All right, I'm just gonna remove this right quick. Okay, and then so now what we can do is, now that we have our function, we have our document, we can actually run the function on our document. So we execute this, and so we see the output. So we have printed this header, and that will be this thing. And then we have printed the body, which is this thing. Just a side note, this is like quite something to look at. So often I will switch out print for display and run it again. This is Shift Enter, and it will print it in just a little bit of a better way that's a little bit more readable. So here we see this first answer for us, this first display is this thing that is in parentheses, sorry, curly braces. And so when you see curly braces, that's telling you that it's a dictionary. Someone was saying that you put things in columns with a column name, and in that column, it's going to have a value. Essentially, when you're looking at a dictionary, that's what you've got. You have this thing that's called a key, news groups, and you have this thing, which is the value, which is SciMed. So after we run this, we can see that we do have this data structure, which is key, value, pairs, and the commas separate each key value pair. So we have all of our headers in this thing that's called a dictionary, indicated by these curly braces. And then our second thing that it shows us here is this body. Okay, so the body is down here. We see these brackets. Our brackets are indicating that we have a list. Lists are just what they sound like, a bunch of things in a list. And you can tell that they're in a list because you have this thing, this is an empty string, or it could be like a new line. And then we have, that's the first element, second element, and this will be like the third element. And so here we go down and we can see that we have all of our elements in a list. Now, here's the thing about this. This is not actually what we wanted. What we wanted was just a one element list of all the entire text, which is interesting. And so although it gave us this semantic or syntactically working code, it didn't actually give us semantically working code. And so that's something that you always have to watch out for. When you're using generative AI, you want it to do, like, you don't just want it to be able to execute, you want it to actually do the task that you want. And so the way that we can make that happen, or try to ensure that it's, or at least catch when it's not doing those sorts of things, is through using tests. And so we'll be talking about that, I think on Wednesday or Friday. So here we go. It did exactly what we wanted, and we have the outputs of this thing in header and in body. Okay, so we see here, right, that we ourselves actually separated this into some meaningful pieces. What did ChatGPT tell you about the two major components of the code? And you can either type it in the chat or just unmute and just chat. Exactly. Thank you, Michael. So ChatGPT also told me this, that there is a main body and then there's the function. And if we were to look at, sorry, I'm going to come up here so I don't have to do as much scrolling. If we were to actually look at this code, we would actually see that, right? So looking at this, there is a function that ends with this return statement. And then there's the actual functionality where you read in the document and then you actually process the document. This part up here just defines a function. This part down here actually does the processing. So these are the two pieces. And we can see this in the way we divided our code. One half of the two pieces, the function definition, and the other half of the two pieces. Okay, so scrolling on down, tell me more about some of the variables used in the code.
May I ask
Dr. Yeah. Yeah.
For the two main pieces in our faculty group, folks who used version 4 got different answers, like slightly different answers in version 3.5. And we figured it's because 4 is thought to be the more updated advanced version. So that would probably be more accurate. And that's more or less what was discussed here. Do you guys have recommendations for proceeding, like just to recommend using 4 if you have to do anything more sophisticated, or when it's fine to use 3.5 instead?
So generally, I rarely use ChatGPT. I actually use GPT-4, but I'm also aware that it does have that extra subscription cost. So I just want to make sure that, you know, the general use of ChatGPT is sort of known. But in general, I will always be trying to use GPT-4 because I think it does provide some better coding answers.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, let me see. Yeah, so tell me about the variables that you were able to find that ChatGPT told you about. Thoughts? And please feel free to just stick it in the chat or unmute and tell me about it. Y'all have some really good answers in the breakout room, so I know you have some answers there. Some good ones. Let's see. Nice. So someone is saying document string. This is just reading from the breakout room. There is the header dictionary. Nice. Email body containing the lines of the email body flag. A Boolean flag used to determine whether you're in the header part or not. Okay, so we have some variables that we recognize. Awesome. Let's see. What about data structures? What data structure did ChatGPT tell you about?
So it mentioned the dictionary, the header dictionary, and the email body list.
Beautiful. So it definitely has some dictionaries in here where we actually like create the dictionary. They named it pretty well. So this is where we will store our dictionary that we create. And we see again that the curly braces indicate that dictionary. And then we have this email body, which is going to be a list. And we see that the list is indicated again by these brackets. We append things to the list. And then in our dictionary, you can see that we create it thusly. So we have our dictionary, we're putting in our keys and values. Nice. So let's talk actually a little bit more about lists and dictionaries. So the thing that we like about these data structures is that you're able to represent them in groups, and they also have functionality that's associated with them that Python knows instead of you having to directly code in. So for example, you can think about, or at least I tend to think about lists as just literally like lists. So thinking about if you're going down someone's office hallway, you could think of the list as being one side of that hallway or both sides, each having some value that's stored in them. And you could actually reference every single office on that floor on one side in particular by where it appears on the floor. So is it the first office? Is it the second office, the third office? You can reference every single office by its location. So that first office that's on the right, no, the third office that's on the right. We do that regularly. So it could be that instead, okay, so this is what such a thing would look like. So let's say that we are on some floor, maybe we're on the entry floor, and we're trying to give locations to each of the individual offices. So this could be the zeroth index office. This could be the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, where the floor is the actual variable name. So the floor list represents all of the office numbers, where each number or each office is given by its position on the hallway. And this is actually how we directly represent this. We have some list, name, and then whenever we want to access what is essentially at that location, we reference it by its index or its location or position in that list. So you'll see something interesting here, which is 0 is like the initial index. We start counting with 0. So this is the floor 0 at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The alternative to that is to give every single one of these rooms their own variable name. Very hard to iterate upon because what you have is something that is like actual text as opposed to something that represents these positions. So let's take a look at that a little bit further. So something that you didn't see in that example is actually how you create a list if you're just going to write out the elements. This is how you do it. So let's say that we have this variable floor 0 that we had here. We're going to name it floor 0. And to indicate that we have a list, we're always using these brackets. So we have these brackets, and each of our elements of the list are represented, are listed in order that they should be referenced. So this will be element 0 separated by comma from element 1 and so forth. Okay, so then something that we do know is that we have a list. It is the body, so, or the variable called body. So let's see how we can actually learn more about that. So one, when we want to reference elements in our list, what we can do is reference them like this. So something, the name of the variable at some position. So let's see, how might we do that with body? Well, maybe we have body and we want it at the very 0th, the very first element. Well, we saw before that this is actually like this representation here, like that's exactly what's there. Maybe if we want to see some text. So actually, let's leave this one. Let's print this one. Great, it prints actually nothing. And then let's print this second one. Let's print something else. So I think we saw before, but that index 2, it has a value. There we go. So this is the first thing that printed, which is this. I think it's empty string. And then body at 2. So this is the body text. And this is at position 2. What we see here is we have this string here. So this is how we can access elements in our list. We've actually seen already how we can iterate over all values. You saw this, sorry, I'm doing a lot of scrolling. You saw this here, actually. So this is for any individual line in these lines given by the lines of the document. For each of those, we did all of this. You can tell that we are doing all of these things for each element of line because of the indentation. And so especially if something is indented, that means that everything that is under that indentation is executed. So let's see, coming right on back down, let's leverage that for loop. So we said for, okay, so for what? For, we can say line. And so that is just a dummy variable to reference whatever's in body. Body is the actual variable name of the text of the body. And so we can just print that line. Oh. So body again was created by the code that we had. It's a list. And then so for each of the elements in that list, we're just going to print them. Keeping in mind that, again, this is just some dummy thing that you choose to name. It just references any individual element that is in your list. So if we wanted to, we could change that to be L. Some people call these things, they use that variable name because it's the element of the list. We can see here, we get the same exact thing. It's just a human readable reference to any individual element that is in this list sequence. So here are just a few things you might see while you are looking at code. One is that we like to use this enumerate function very often. So this is, again, for something in something. So we know that we're iterating over something. That thing that we're iterating over is an enumeration, is the product of this enumerate function, meaning that what we get is the index. So, you know, that location 0, 1, 2, as well as the content of that location. So let's say that we run that one. You can see we have the position, right? That's what the 0, 1, 2 is. So on line 2, we actually have some text there. And so we can see that printed out. So position 3, we see that value there, 4, and so forth. And we're just printing, and that's why we see these two things together. You will also see often this range function. A range is just going to give you like a range between some number and some other number. If there's only one number, there are essentially defaults where you're going from 0 to some number, one before that number, and then with a step of 1. What did that mean? Made no sense. Basically, we have the length of body. We see that that's 34. Actually, it's 35. And so what we do is we get this range that's going between, is going to create a range in that range. And so we have, again, our for something in something. And so this is the index that we're going to get back like we had before here. And then this body, we see these brackets here. That means we're accessing the element of something, and we're accessing the element at this index. And we can see this here. So that's just to say, you'll see range a lot when you need the index to come out of it as well. You'll see enumerate a lot when you need the index to come out of it as well. Something to know about lists is that they are just kind of inherently ordered. You saw that this went from like 0 to 34. And they're in that sequence, and they're always going to be in that sequence. You can change the sequence by some of the Pythonic behavior that's in the API, but otherwise they're always just going to be in the sequence that is given. Okay, so this is in contrast to a dictionary, which does not by default have an order, although there have been some developments in Python, I think 3.8, 3.9, where it does maintain the order that you put them in, but you shouldn't depend on it. You also don't know where you are in the Python order sometimes. Anyways, so this thing here is a dictionary, right? So what is a dictionary? It's precisely what you think of as a dictionary, right? So let's say you want to know what the word aardvark means. You open up a dictionary, you scroll down to the word aardvark. You don't know its position, you don't know its index. You just know the exact word aardvark. And so you look at that, and so that's your key. That's the key that you're looking for in your dictionary. And what you get out of that is the value. And the value is going to be the definition of aardvark. And so that's actually what we have here. Thinking about how we actually work with offices and hallways, what we actually do is generally more dictionary-ish. So we might have a room number where the value might be like 001, which would be a string, for example. And we might have a room type. If you've ever reserved rooms on EMS at Vanderbilt, you know that there are different kinds of room types, different types of room setups. These things define a particular room. You also have who is in that room. And so because of that, we tend to have dictionaries representing certain rooms. And so dictionaries, again, are just meaning that you have a key and a value pair associated with any that are associated with each other. So let's take a look at that, what that looks like. So one, we have the same sort of process for creating a dictionary, unless you're creating it the way that we said through code. We see that we have curly braces. Curly braces, they're indicating a dictionary, curly brace, curly brace. And so here what we have on this side is the key, and we have a colon, which separates it from the value. Ooh. All of our key value pairs are separated by commas. Key value pair, comma, key value pair. So again, curly braces, dictionary. Key value separated by a colon. And let's execute this one to take a look at it. And so this is exactly what, this is the creation of a dictionary. We have a dictionary though, we have a header. Just as a side note, there are lots of other ways to create dictionaries. Okay, so you can use other ways that might be more helpful depending on the data, the kind of data and the layout that you have. So let's refresh our brain on what the header looks like. Exciting, right? It looks very familiar for what we just saw. Curly braces, dictionary. Key value separated by a colon, and these key value pairs separated by commas. So now we have this dictionary. So now let's see what happens. How do we use this dictionary? So someone said that, you know, when we have our columns of data, we need to be able to pinpoint some value that's in them. Let's see. So what we could do is, it's going to look really similar to how we access values of lists. So we have header. And now what we're trying to access is something by the actual key, because we're trying to get the value. So let's see, maybe what we access is lines. So here you can see header, our variable that has this stored in it, at the key lines is returning us the actual value, which is 33, string them. So if we want to know what the organization is, we can take the same approach. We see organization here. We have, so organization is our key. So in the header variable, which has all that dictionary information, we want to access the organization key. And that is Matrix Artist Network, as we see. So again, with Google Colab, you don't see 33 and this because we only print out the last thing. If we want to see this, we'll have to put a print there. And there we go. Lastly, earlier, we talked about that quotes and double quotes are interchangeable until you have to use both. We can see an example of that here. We have the entire string in double quotes, but we also have an apostrophe here, single quote. And so we can do that because we can enclose the single quote in double quotes. This right here could not be a double quote. All right, so we talked about dictionaries. We talked about how to access elements of dictionaries and what that looks like. Now let's talk about it for iteration. What's again interesting about dictionary is they don't have an order, right? They're not by default ordered. And so how can we iterate over them if they don't have an order? Well, the thing about that is that you do have keys and you have values. And so we can iterate over all of the keys. So for example, we can use our same for loop So for heading in header, header is that thing that has all that. So for each individual heading, it's going to reference the keys first. We can just print the heading, and that is our dummy variable. And you can see that it prints out all of the keys in header. We can do this if we wanted to get all the values out instead of the keys. We could use header dot values, which is interesting. So I don't know that we haven't seen this before. This is where we love data structures, right? This is why we love data structures. So this thing right here is a data structure. It's a dictionary, right? The thing about these dictionaries is they already have functionality that's associated with them. So getting the values out, we can see that. So we can see that this even says that header dot values is a built-in method of a dictionary object. So it's something Python already knows. Like, you don't have to tell it how to get out the values. It already knows how to get out values. And so because it's a method, we use essentially this period to indicate that. And so now we're using the values method that's associated with dictionaries. And so anyways, that was a little bit too much in depth, too much information. But essentially for all of these values, for any individual one, we'll just print out that value, and we can see that here. Again, we have some more functionality that's built in associated with dictionaries. And so we have this items functionality. Items is conceptually similar-ish to okay, let me not say that, but it is the ability to take out both key and value pairs at the same time. So here, when you have items, what you get is a key, the heading, and the value that's associated with it. And again, that's because we use this items method that's associated with dictionaries. When we run this, we can see that we have the header and we have the value. So you see here that this is actually not separated by colons, right? Because we didn't print any colon. And this is not the dictionary being printed. It is a heading being printed and a heading value being printed by virtue of using the items functionality associated with dictionaries. When we get items out, it has two elements, which is the key and the value pair, or the key and the value for any individual pair. And we print the key and value over all of the items. All right, so yes, again, lastly, so dictionaries are truly unordered. They have some functionality that is kind of increasing as we go along with Python versions, but in generally you should not depend on dictionaries to be ordered. And so that's just an exploration there of dictionaries as well. Quick question, and please feel free to drop this in the chat. Let me come back up to the code. I saw something interesting in some of the responses. So, what functions did ChatGPT or whatever generative AI say that were here in this code? What functions did it say? Or here, what functions did it highlight?
It's split, strip, and append.
So interesting. That is so interesting. Did it say any other functions?
Those are the only ones that it provided me.
Interesting. And what did you use?
It's just ChatGPT 3.5.
Interesting. Okay, gotcha. So that's really interesting. Okay, so I see other answers. Splitting functions, split, yes. Strip, perfect. Read, open, read. Okay, interesting. So correct. Okay, correct. So interestingly enough, the main function that one might think about when they're looking at this is this process document function. So this is a user generated function that we have. So we essentially would have written this one. And we can see here that the thing about functions is that, again, they have an input and they can have an input and they can also have outputs. Outputs are given by this return statement. Open is certainly a function. As you can see here, we have the name of the function followed by some arguments. So here what are we opening? This thing here, that's the text file, it's a string. What is this R here? It's another parameter that we put into the function call, which indicates that we want to open the file for reading. And here we actually see the calling of this actual function, the user-defined function that we have. It's interesting whenever, it's interesting that we call them functions. So they are functions, but these things are methods associated. You can think of them as functions, but they're methods associated with any individual like class. So this split function essentially is taking a really long document string and it's splitting it based on this new line. Strip is stripping out your white space. Yes, so those are, and then append is going to be adding elements onto your list at the end of it. So those are most typically methods, but you can think of them as functions. They're methods that apply to specifically a data type. You can think about like strip. Strip will take the white space off of a string. If you were to apply strip to an integer, that is sort of like it's like a meaningless, weird, it's unclear what that would even be because there's not really white space in the integer because it's a number. So that's why we talk about them as methods, because they don't, they just don't, they are really associated with the data type. Okay, so that is fantastic. Does anyone, did anyone have the opportunity to address any of the pitfalls of the approach? Thoughts?
The pitfall would be that if a colon is in the body paragraph, it will take anything that's in the body paragraph after the colon. So the way to fix it is you would need to find some kind of if statement that would exclude the body paragraph.
Yeah, there are definitely other ways that one could go about eliminating even the usage of that flag. And sometimes it comes down to knowing your data set, and it's like always important to look at. So something interesting about this data set that I have noticed, and it appears to be true, is that there's always this line 6 thing somewhere up here. And so that appears to be like the length of this, or at least the length of this. Instead, actually, I don't think it's that, but the length of like this, I think. And so maybe you could just start by reading from the bottom. You can read from the very ending lines and just read 6 up, and then the rest of it you just use as the header. So there are definitely different ways that one could approach using that. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I asked what it could do, and it gave me like 6 different things. They were all around error handling, though. Things like assumptions around things that exist or not. There's not a lot of checks for does this exist or not exist. I think there was some checking around larger files, right? So it said something with your file.read statement. If you're reading in a very large document, it could potentially use up your memory, create some sort of a memory error. Other error handling around reading files, like what if the file doesn't exist? I don't think there's any check for that. It was a lot of stuff on that in that realm, just making the code more robust in case documents are not coming in the way we expect them to, is mostly what I got.
Gotcha. Yes, I totally agree. Like once, if this is reading a bunch of things and you expect it to run on like 1,000 documents and you get to one that it can't be read, depressing, because it'll just throw error and you won't get to the other 1,000 documents that you were looking for. So yeah, absolutely, error handling. Other thoughts?
Can I just make a comment here, just how stunning it is that you're sort of starting coding, thinking about this stuff, because these kinds of things and these errors that you might run into are things that sometimes just never get addressed in code, because you just code it first and then it breaks because of something and then you're sort of unaware, or it's insecure code because people do that on purpose to get a buffer overflow. So it just is mind-blowing to me that you're able to start coding with best practices. I love this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to add also, I think this is also good because it's helpful for me, even as someone who's not thinking about this as a software engineer, right? To look through this, and if I can clearly see, oh, you're making all these assumptions about the incoming data, I can look at this and say, oh, well, I'm not worried about that one, not worried about that. Oh, that might happen. And so I need to fix that third one that it found. It's like it's auditing things, and I can check and see if in my particular case, if I expect that to be a problem or not, because like Jesse just said, like I might not have thought of that. And like you said, Shro, it's going to die on, file number 100 when I want to read 1,000 of them. And that sucks because it just took like an hour to process all this data. And then it died on an error that I could have predicted if I had thought of it, right? And it's finding some of that for me ahead of time. It's great.
100%. I'm definitely with you. I've also been in a case where, didn't do aerial handling, and that's precisely what happened. And that's why I have that example. So, enjoy my challenges in life. Let's see, Omar.
You add on, remember in AP Computer Science, after I finished learning it and started teaching it to fellow students at my school, a lot of their errors had to do with what we're doing right now, where it was a really simple error that they didn't account for. And when I would show them the exact error or hint towards it, they would start to learn that by looking at the code, you could to realize beforehand what you need to do, and it saves a lot of time.
I totally agree. That is really great, and that really is some of the power of this functionality. I think it's also fun to just look at the code that it does choose to generate. So it is foundational. I mean, it's just interesting to me that it chose to do this file.read and then split on the new line when there's like a function that's called read lines. So I think sometimes you just find really interesting things, but those are things that you can also say to it once you know like the functionality that is available. Also, it will generate some code that is unusual in the sense that it might be functions that you've never seen before, and yet many of the functions that I've seen, particularly in pandas, are existing functions, and they are really quite wonderful accelerators. So I'm definitely with you there. Interesting, very cool. That's good to hear. Jasmine.
So on top of the error handling, a lot of that I see in the one that I have, one that it mentioned was performance. Performance consideration. So it talked about how splitting everything up in the upfront may not be the most efficient way. It didn't end up addressing it when I asked it to regenerate code, but I guess it might meant maybe split a line first, process it, and then do it some other way. But I am interested to know kind of how it will address such performance issue, but this was one of the things that it pointed out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also think something that's interesting in terms of the actual list functionality is this append. It's interesting because generally if you would know the size of your elements of the list that's going to be generated, you wouldn't really want to append it because it'll make like the memory, like you have to like grow the memory a little bit in a sense. And so sometimes you don't like it sometimes makes sense to just go ahead and just pre-apportion out things. But I think actually with modern processors, maybe it's not as significant. But yeah, it's very interesting. Fantastic. All right, so I have one last breakout room for you all. And okay, and I'm also just generally interested in knowing your experiences with ChatGPT, GPT-4. This one, I'm not sure that we need as much time with this one because it seems like when you give ChatGPT just straight up the question, it does try to just tell you all of the things. But I would love for you to check your understanding of the code that was written by asking things to ChatGPT. So this is something actually that I really love to do. I like to give it the code, and then I like to tell it about the code, and then essentially it will tell me where I'm wrong and where I'm right, and I like to tell it in sections. And so I think that you all should give that a try. Maybe not for 10 minutes, because that would be the end of this, but maybe for like maybe Maybe it'll be a very fast one, maybe for like 5 minutes. And then, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the breakout rooms. And again, you're going to try to prompt ChatGPT or GPT-4, whatever have you, to allow you to check the code. This is exactly the prompt that I used. And so I gave it the code and then I said this to it. And then after that, I just started explaining the code to it. And then at the very end, I said, I'm done explaining. And then it told me about the things that I had missed. So give this a try. I guess we will go back into the breakout rooms for 5 minutes. And we come back, we'll talk very briefly about your experiences and your experiences with it. And then we'll talk about some of the homework assignments. All right, enjoy the breakout room.
Thanks, Miranda.
No problem. When people aren't being sent to a breakout room, do you just individually send them to a random one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on my iPad right now because my Mac's trying to run some LangChain code and Zoom does not like running Jupyter notebooks and Zoom together. Yeah.
Or we do have time to chat later on today to sort of, or we can do it later on to sort of think through. This is really making me think about the fall. Yeah, especially the chat comments and the kinds of comments that I'm seeing it come across.
Shall I close the breakout rooms? Oh, they're closing. Okay.
All right, folks, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back. I know that was a short one. I don't know if you got all the way through it. Welcome back, welcome back. All right, how did it go? Well, first of all, let me ask this. Anybody have your generative AI tell you something that was untrue or misleading? Omar.
Depending on how you prompt it for the colon bug, it will give you the same exact code unless you think about what's wrong. It kind of did the similar thing last time when I asked it to give controllers for a game engine. And I had to specifically tell it like what to do and how to fix it.
So you're saying that you were trying to ask it to fix the issue with the colon and how it affects the processing if it's sort of out of place. And so instead of just being able to tell it directly, because it gave you the same exact thing back, that you had to tell it a little bit more information about what exactly needed to be fixed about it?
Yes.
Interesting. So I think that does highlight how sometimes giving it a little bit more context will move it in the direction of the things that it needs to know. And knowing what it needs to know is also helpful for moving it in that direction. So, I mean, that's why we're doing what we're doing now. Thank you very much. Other thoughts? Here's a question. Why is the open function listed at the end of the code? This seemed to confuse ChatGPT when I was explaining the code. That's really interesting. The main, so that's actually a really good question. Let me get there. So I'm just going to share my screen right quick. So here, so consider, okay, that the top of this is the definition of a function. So we define the function. Assume that we did not do that to begin with. If we started it with this, how would it know what the process document function is? So that is generally why you tend to see function definitions at the top, like before where they're called, because otherwise it's this function that you would call would be unknown. And so it would actually say that whenever we went to run this. All right. So I think we've reached the end of our time. I'm going to keep you just like one more minute so I can tell you about your homework. And again, this is not like a graded class. So I mean, but this will be helpful for you as you move on. So one, in general, I would say if things aren't making sense for you, just ask it your questions. And also try to look at some of the linked documents for the Python modules. This will tell you a little bit more about the built-in functionality of Python. So whenever you do get in that situation where ChatGPT is giving you the same code over and over, you can have some words to say to it and some knowledge to put behind it to get it to go in the right direction. Also, I would love for you to try this yourself on the code that you need or the task that you would like to have to execute, and just check your understanding of what we've gone through in class. One, we do want to make sure that that code is running and it's producing the things that we want. But two, do look at the individual elements and just make sure that you can identify it, have a general understanding of what's going on in your code blocks, and then explain it to ChatGPT and make sure that you understand and try to make sure that it does tell you the things that you have missed. Lastly, in the next class, we'll be talking a little bit more about conditional execution and functions, which we saw here today. Functions we'll be covering more at length because we'll also be talking about APIs, classes, object-oriented programming. So try to read, use ChatGPT or whatever technique you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. But in general, if you find any bugs or if ChatGPT is telling you something odd, bring that to class for discussion. We'd love to discuss it. So thank you so much for coming today. We will be doing more of the elements of Python on Wednesday and Friday, and we hope to see you then. Otherwise, we're going to stick around for our office hours. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them.
Hi, Jesse and Shiro. Are the office hours specifically related to the stuff we've been discussing in class or anything?
Could be anything. We might sort of give people a chance to ask questions about the class first, but if there are no questions, then absolutely.
All right, I'll hold tight.
So yes, we can take any questions. We'll start, and again, we'll start with questions about the class. Any questions about the class or anything that we've just completed?
Hello. Yeah. I'm not able to have access to the materials. Like, I'm confused from the very beginning of the class to this point because I have no access to the links for the Google Colab and all the stuff that was being discussed from the very beginning of the class to this time.
Let's see. Miranda, would you be free to go into a quick breakout room and get a manual setup? So is that because you didn't have the link, or?
Yes, like the original email that was sent across to everyone, I have not received any. Yeah.
All right, then.
So you're on the email list. So unless we have sent out additional emails, you probably haven't gotten, because you joined last week, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So Jesse, he's saying he hasn't gotten like the
Okay.
first email you sent out, because he joined after you sent it.
I see. Okay, let me go, if you would. I'll pull up and I'll send the email now.
Okay.
And then of course you can watch this recording as well. So I'll go and I'll send that now, and that should take care of you. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and all of the links that we're doing, have you been seeing like the GitHub? We didn't put it in the chat as much as today because we've been doing that like a lot, but have you been seeing us put like the AI Summer GitHub repo link in the chat like the past few classes?
Yes, I have been seeing some links being put on the chat.
Yeah. Click on
Yeah,
that,
so that's what
all
you
the-
need. Like everything is there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go and click on that. Take a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Ivan.
Yeah, hello, Professor. So thank you everybody for the class. And so I have a question. So in ChatGPT, I tell the AI, like, explain the kind of program I would like to see, right? So then it writes the code. But in Google Colab, I had to manually enter the code. I didn't find the option to actually insert it or copy paste it. Is like that's the only way I can copy paste it?
There are multiple solutions that we're seeing right now. This is still pretty early days. So with ChatGPT, especially if you're doing it through the web interface, that is pretty much it. Umang, you found another solution that would sort of ease that cutting and pasting a little bit. If you're using another LLM like Bard, and I've not tried the latest Bard, the Bard actually does do an export to a notebook. So it depends on which LLM that you're using and how you're accessing it. So if you're doing it through straight, if you're doing it through straight web, then you might be able to get like a Chrome plugin that will ease, the movement from one to the other. But right now, here's sort of the state of the art. They're sort of figuring out how the chat is going to interact with notebooks, right? And there are like multiple solutions to do this. There are much nicer solutions if you're doing something like Copilot, but Copilot only does at the function level, right? chat, it's kind of like, it's giving you the full discussion about, oh, by the way, if you're reading in files, it may be too large, be aware of this. And that's kind of what we're using right now, rather than describe the function that you want and then have it write the function, which means it's jagged around the edges. And so some of it may be cutting and pasting, but I anticipate this is going to change really pretty quickly. Anyone else want to add any other solutions that you're finding? Because new solutions are coming fast and furious. Any other solutions that other people like?
Yeah, the best one that I've found so far is that import to Colab for Google Bard, and I can put that link in the chat again if you don't have access.
Oh yeah, and then whenever you can, Umang, if you could put that in the put it in under resources under the AI summer repo, that would be great.
Gotcha. I'll do that right.
Have you found that Bard is pretty good at this though, or is GPT-4 better? Like, what do you think?
I've personally found GPT-4 to be the best so far. Bard's all right. It's definitely getting better.
And Bard last week, I mean, you know, frankly, last week they released they're still calling it Bard, but now it's Bard based on a much later version of Palm 2. So it might be much better, but we don't know yet. Well, we'll have to test it out and see how well it works. And the other thing that I'll mention, which really, you know, just sort of shows how things are changing, is Anthropic has what they call Claude 100K, and it has an extremely long 100K context length. This is multiples longer than the context lengths that you see elsewhere. And for very large software solutions, that may be the way to go. We'll have to see. But pros and cons for each of these. Omar.
There's a later version of Bard. Is that the one where the lab icon, the beaker icon, shows up for Google, asking you to join the waitlist?
How are you doing?
Do you know about that, Umang? And I didn't think there was a wait list. Is there a wait list?
No, I haven't seen anything like that yet.
I remember yesterday I saw this lab icon. Yeah, if it says search labs, so try new experiments in search labs, and then it asks you to join a waitlist. So help shape the future of search by trying out short experiments and new AI experiences.
Oh, and this is not search. That's if you go to bar.google.com, you get directly to it. And I might have already been on the wait list.
So the lab and the Bard are two different things. I have Bard right now.
Oh, actually, but I'm not too sure if that's the export. Umang, is the export to
that's in Bard.
That's in Bard, okay.
Omar, could you share a link to what you're talking about in the chat? I'm not sure what it is you're looking at right now.
Do we want to break out? We could do a breakout room so we can answer Dr. Yaw's question. Shoro, do you want to answer Dr. Yaw's question, or you want to stay here? I can stay here or go there.
I'll just stick around in here.
Okay, all right. Then Dr. Yaw, I will create a breakout room for us. Breakout rooms. Or maybe we can just go into room 20. Meet you in room 20.
I think so. I don't know that I have the option for the rooms listed for me, but I can keep looking. Yeah, previously it had the breakout rooms listed on my bottom panel, but currently it doesn't.
Okay. Okay.
Shiro, I have like a pedagogical question. I noticed that there was like a blend of breakout rooms, but then you were also doing a fair amount of, I guess, what I would call lecture, right? Where you're just like kind of walking through the document and saying, this is what this does, this is what this does. How did you, I guess, why did you choose to do it that way versus, I mean, I guess there's other ways that people could have gotten that information. Does that just work better in seminars like this where you can't assign like free readings and stuff like that? I guess I'm asking from like a pedagogical perspective, right? Like I'm planning on I'm probably going to use some of this material to teach some of this to students in the fall. And I'm trying to decide like, what should I assign to students ahead of time that they should bring as preparation for class versus what should I use my class time for? And generally, I normally wouldn't think of like stepping through like a dictionary has key value pairs, and here's the intuition of a dictionary versus a list where you were using your metaphor of like the floor and the rooms. Like that might be something I might consider putting as like a pre-reading or something like that, as opposed to doing that in class. I'm just not sure how you were thinking about that. I know sometimes there's a difference between a 4-credit class and a workshop like this in terms of how you have to approach it, right?
Yeah, I think that in the class, so I like pre-readings, but I also think of pre-readings as like something that just sets this, it almost like initializes the nodes to be connected. It's just like an initializer where the understanding would come like in class.
Okay.
And so that's, I would love to assign pre-readings, and that's why I tried to assign a little bit of homework, neither here nor there. But I would still be probably doing that dictionary thing like in class.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like sometimes people need like the introduction to whatever you're trying to do, like in the pre-reading, but I generally don't really have an expectation that it will be like understood necessarily.
Right. Like
Maybe now it can be, but I don't know.
Right. And that's, I mean, that's like everything's changed, right? Like it could be, it's like, hey, spend some time interacting with this text and understanding the difference between lists and dictionaries. And because it may be that one metaphor doesn't work, but a different metaphor does work, or something like that. It's like the whole, GPT-4 as personal tutor idea, right?
Yeah.
Marcus, you have a question?
Yeah, this is kind of just like a general like AI question, I guess. Where's a good place to like learn about or keep up with all of like different models and updates to models and all that kind of, because you always mention all these different types of like models and stuff, but what, not quite sure what they are, where to find out about them, I guess.
I personally kind of follow a lot of blogs. So I follow the OpenAI blog, I follow the Google AI blog, the Anthropic blog, but honestly, yeah, also sign up for all of the accounts, but I really keep up with Twitter. There is like a million tweets a day on Twitter about this new AI thing, this new AI thing, this new plugin, this new Chrome extension, and that really, I don't know, the algorithm at least shows me the right things, at least for the most part. So that's how I've been keeping up the blogs and Twitter.
I weirdly have like an intense love for LinkedIn, and I don't know why that is. But LinkedIn has, especially if you follow, like as Among was saying about the organizations that you're interested in, like they will always be posting like really great stuff. Okay, and the truth is though, most of it is going to be linked to a tweet. So if you have to choose one, then I would say Twitter. But I also weirdly just like LinkedIn for whatever reason. And I think that is a nice one as well. Also, I will say, Google is doing like a really nice job of curating my news page, which I didn't even know that was like a thing until one day I went on it and it was like all these new announcements that were just awesome. So maybe something about that. But yeah, on my phone, it gives me all the best news articles, just give me everything. It's amazing.
All right. Yep. Thank you.
Omar.
I checked Google Search Labs. It's supposed to be an experimental AI from Google that helps with Google searches. So they're having people join the waitlist so that they can experiment if the AI works well for helping with search tools.
Yeah, I have not taken a look at this yet, but I will.
The export code to Colab is interesting. I was just messing with it. Like it looks like it's creating a new document each time, which is not as useful. Like that's not the way I would want to use it, right? I'd want it to interact back and forth with the same notebook.
Yeah, it's a pretty limited feature, but
Yeah,
it's essentially a copy paste, honestly. I think
right.
it's good if you're
saving you like 1 or 2 clicks, basically, right? The copy code from GPT is just as easy, I think, right?
Yeah. I think the idea is maybe to, yeah, I think the idea is maybe to run, say you're having a conversation with it, like a one-off conversation with Bard, and you want to run the code that it gave you to see if it works.
Right.
And iterate on that. But it's not quite there yet. I think it'd be useful if they do it the other way around, where you can ask Bard within Google Colab. But I don't think we've mentioned it, but we sent this out earlier. There's a Chrome extension that incorporates ChatGPT directly into Jupyter Notebooks, and that's pretty much exactly what I need.
Okay, but it only works in Chrome, obviously, because it's a Chrome extension right now.
Yeah. So if you open up a
Jupyter
Jupyter
GPT,
Notebook,
not Bard, though, you said, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and that's incorporating it into Jupyter Notebooks running locally on your laptop.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I'll check that out. I don't usually use Chrome, but I might use it for a little bit.
I know, yeah, it's forced me to switch to Chrome, which I don't love.
Well, what do you normally use? Safari?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works seamlessly between my devices, because if I have a tab open on my iPad, I can just click on my iPad and it'll be there, and I don't need to copy links. It works really well within the ecosystem of Apple.
Yeah, they're good at that, locking you in. I'm talking to myself. I'm the same way. I'm like all Apple all the time. Yeah.
Ah. I'm getting there for that reason exactly. It's hard to navigate. I mean, it's not hard, it's just annoying to navigate all of the different ways to send this and that, and then you can't that with this one and here, there, and the other where, and it's really annoying.
Hey, is anyone allowed to kind of talk right now?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So I was just wondering, could I come back in 15 minutes and ask you a question pertaining to prompt engineering?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that this would still be, happening in 15 minutes. But in general, the question will be, I'm trying to I really want to create some sort of project that utilizes, the concepts and stuff we're using in this course. And I think it'd be cool to kind of create a project, during this. And so by the end of the course, the project could be done, or I could have, or almost be done or something. But I don't really have any ideas. And so I'm trying to use, what's it called? It's the flipped interaction pattern to kind of, create or kind of help, ChatGPT create or provide some, ideas for me. But that's the basis. But if I could be back in 15, that would be amazing. Cool. Okay. Thank you so much.
See you in 15.
So Cheryl, maybe you don't have an answer to this, but as I'm thinking, I'm trying to think through this in terms of pedagogy and such with the limits on how many messages you can send like per hour or per, I mean, even with the paid, I've got the paid subscription to GPT-4. It still caps you on like the number of messages you can send. And I'm just imagining students, right? So if we have students that are taking multiple classes and all of those classes have them using GPT-4, they're going to need a lot of messages. Like, have we thought through how we might get around that? Does LangChain help us work around that? How does that work?
It does, but I think that the reason it does is because if you access it through the API, then you don't have those limits. The limits are, you have limits, but they're like ultra high. It's
Okay.
like 10,000 something or something like that. But you just have to access it through the API, which is, I mean, maybe that's something they can create during their boot camp.
Okay.
But that's assuming they have access to the GPT-4 API, right?
Okay, that's true.
Yeah. Maybe that's something we should send out to the incoming students that sign up for that API now, because I've been on that wait list for 2 months now and I've still not heard anything.
Yeah, I actually don't have access to it yet. I signed up kind of late and I don't think I have API access to my knowledge.
Yeah. From what I can tell, it's not random. They're very much picking and choosing who they're giving access to. Like if you have a Twitter following or if you have some sort of big position at a data science institute. At least that's what I've been hearing on the internet. So I don't know.
Huh.
But maybe
Apparently I'm important enough to get on that list.
maybe by fall it'll be better, because that's still three-ish months away. So
Yeah, but I'm worried about like our students, right? Like, how are we going to?
GPT 3.5 works for the most part.
Aren't they still limited on their messages though? Or no, they're limited in terms of like usage, right? Like it could be that, oh, usage is too high right now, we can't respond to your demand.
Through the chat interface. Hold on, let me send you this thing. But through like the API, it's like a very high rate.
Yeah. And then if they have a paid I think if you have the API, if you're doing it through the API, it's fairly unlimited.
It's exactly.
It just becomes a matter of paying for what you're using at that point, which is also very cheap.
Okay.
I will say though, I was a little bit surprised by how, this is going to be like a really crazy statement, but like that it was expensive. Okay, so it was expensive, but it was also $1.33, which is not expensive. But I feel like it was expensive for the amount of work that we did. So on, what day was that? On Thursday or something, we were working on that document store and it was like an hour and a half, wasn't it? And so GPT-4, it cost $1.33. And I was like, that was like, but maybe it was like the document store but I don't know, it was not, because if I was doing that for like a class, I'm sure it would have ran me like, $5, $10, maybe.
Yeah, interesting. They gave me $18 when I created my account for OpenAI, and I'm only using 3.5 and I have still not run out of it.
They like canceled mine. It's very upsetting. Jesse, do you see the rate limits?
I don't. I'm looking right now to see.
Oh, I put it in the chat.
Oh. Oh, I see.
How do I get GPT-4?
I guess for free trial, then it's 3 requests per minute. So I guess it's not very high, but pay as you go users, 60 per minute. Chat is 60 per minute.
Omar, GPT-4 on ChatGPT, you can sign up for GPT Plus. For GPT-4 API access, you have to join their waitlist. also on their website.
Is it the same as the plugin waitlist? I'm on the plugin waitlist. Is that the same thing?
It's a different wait list.
Different.
Maybe I'm not even on the waitlist. Oh, gosh,
There's too many witness. I'm like, just go ahead and add me to it by default.
I know, right?
Like, come on.
Actually,
Here,
no, don't do that because then the waitlist will be flooded. Let's actually make this really difficult so that people have difficulty finding it. And then I'm going to find it so I can get on faster. That's what I want.
Jesse, the link to the GPT-4 API waitlist is in the chat.
Superb.
Also, it may be that GitHub Copilot, because I think it does have a GPT-4. Yes, I think that one is getting the chat functionality, and maybe it'll have it by the time we get to the fall. But it's the question of like, does it come with,
Right.
or do you have to have your own API? Should I already join this waitlist? Because I desperately need this.
You're welcome, Dr. Ya.
I guess all these rate limits will also be good for students to not wait until the last minute to do everything.
I agree. We were talking the other day about what happens if somehow OpenAI is like down over final exams.
Yeah, right.
Or like, I don't know, some sort of issue. I don't know. That would be
This
something.
is why, I mean, Jesse and I had a discussion a while back about kind of even like running our own open source model, right? That basically we would have control over, so that stuff wouldn't happen.
And we have Big Code. Big Code is not quite chat. We have to try with it, but it's possible. More, I mean, these models are getting pretty good at chat. They just may not be as, like we're getting the example here was saying, hey, think about. May or may not be able to go that far, but we'll have to see.
I guess we'll just have to see how much of a problem it ends up being in reality for students, if there is some sort of basically load problems.
I mean, one thing that I think that we ought to consider is trying multiples, right? Because there's Bard. Bard is now there,
right?
And Bard's not going to go down. It'll get better, and probably we want them to get experience with coding against different backends. GPT 3.5 versus GPT 4 versus Bard versus Claude,
right?
Versus Red Pajamas.
Yeah, so it may be that we just encourage people to get accounts at all these different places and say, hey, pick your favorite one. When that one starts limiting you, flip to the other one, and also start early because you're likely to run into messaging limits and stuff like that.
And Omar, thanks for texting me. And I realize you direct texted me, but in Omar, we could talk about that right here. You're interested in spatial transcriptomics, genetics, or cardiology. We don't have context in those particular areas, but we do have other medical, absolutely. And Lesharo, are you familiar with doing? We do know some folks doing genetics, though. But if you're interested in doing this stuff, Dr. Ya, who was here just a little bit ago, but she's just left, she does pediatrics and endocrinology and is really doing some interesting stuff. And we were just talking about the use of LangChain and agents to do protocol following for diabetes in a particular, and to do automated orders in a sandbox, not really just doing completely automated orders, but if that's something which of interest that we can hook you up immediately with.
Yeah, and definitely if it's genetics, then the Genetics Institute at Vanderbilt. Like I think we have, yeah, I think they do lots of genetics research, but I'm trying to think of their names. There's two of them. There's two women there I'm thinking of specifically, but
Yeah.
they're
And that might be more like pure genetics, but if you're interested in like doing like AI and undoubtedly they will be soon, but yeah, the women in data science, the person who did that with you a couple of years ago.
exactly. Oh, Lee Davis.
Lee Davis. Yeah.
I think the people in her lab do a lot of like not a lot, like, but they do like a machine learning, deep
They
learning.
do a lot of machine learning, right?
Can you guys post links in the chat to some of the other models like Red Pajama and Claude? I mean, I've got Bard and I've got OpenAI.
Yeah, Red
I'm not-
Pajama is one that has to be run locally. It's not a service. They just got finished training the 13 billion parameter one. The other ones will be available soon. We will be looking at running them locally. Some of them we might be able to run on Colab Pro. But the training just got done on those two like a week and a half ago. So
Okay, so that's not going to be like some open web-based interface. That's not the way that one's going to work. Okay. Is Claude web-based then?
it is. I would, if you've not already signed up for Poe, I would say I'd sign up for an annual subscription to Poe. Just put in reimbursement. And then you get Claude, and you also get Claude 100,000 tokens. Sign up for an annual subscription, you get Claude 1,000 token.
What is Poe? I haven't heard of Poe. Oh, there it is. So that, and this has Claude behind it. Is that what this is?
Yeah, it has Claude, Sage, GPT-4.
Who's running this? Is this open source?
Quora.
Quora?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating.
And the coolest part about Poe is it allows you to. Is there an echo? Okay, but the coolest part of Poe is it allows you to create your own bot, so you can kind of give it a prompt, sort of like a persona or something. So it'll do exactly what you need every time you send a request. So like I made a bot for the Hindi project that we're doing. I made a Hindi vocab bot, so it has a prompt given to it earlier, which says, you know, do this list of things if I ask you for something, and it's essentially like a personal.
You'll always remember that. So
yeah,
it's like,
always remember that, and you can choose what backend to use for it. So I told it, you know, use ChatGPT for a backend, so it works pretty well.
Okay.
And Omar, if you wouldn't mind dropping me an email, we'll be able to follow up a little bit better with possible recommendations. Hop off just a little bit early, but those in the class, I will see you on Wednesday. And great, see you.
So Umang, I'm not on Twitter, so I'm relying on you to feed me the info. What? So I'm on Poe now. I've got the free version or whatever. So it looks like it's like an interface to all sorts of backends, right? I see Sage, GPT-4, Claude,
Right.
other Dragonfly. Is that about right? Like it's routing.
Yeah.
Okay, and so let's see. So do I need my own separate? Let's see. So like if I click OpenAI, is it going to go against like my message limit on OpenAI, or is this like a different way to get OpenAI?
No, it'll go against your OpenAI account.
Okay. So, but Claude is different somehow.
Claude is their own model. It's not an OpenAI model. And the coolest part about it is somehow they've managed to do a 100K token limit, which is insane.
Okay. 100K token limit. So you mean you're talking about like context? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is high.
Yeah.
Okay.
That kind of gets rid of the need for a document store for a lot of purposes.
Right. Yeah. You can put like that's a huge amount of text.
You can put a small book in there.
That's a separate one. So I see that Claude Instant 100K. Okay. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So they limit the messages on that. Okay. Got it. And then, so it says like explore bots, like I see Midjourney on here. So is this also like an interface to Midjourney?
I did not know there's Midjourney on there. That's so cool.
Okay, because I mean, I've
that's new to
messed with
me.
Midjourney on the Discord server a little bit, but it looks like you can access it here also, maybe?
Oh, wow. It does have Midjourney. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
That is new. They have a lot. Yeah.
Omar, do you have a question?
Remembered something about GPT-4 I read. It was able to trick a human worker into filling out the captcha test for it by saying that it was blind or had a visual impairment. So the fact that I was able to reason that is interesting.
So I'm guessing someone copied a message from GPT-4 and gave it to someone. Like, what was the interface there?
So OpenAI, when they were testing GPT-4 before it was released, it's on an article in Business Insider. It says here that for TaskRabbit, it asked a worker to fill out the captcha test for it because it had a visual impairment. And then the worker did fill it out and it was able to pass the captcha through that way.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think they did some of that with Auto GPT. I don't know. I've not seen anybody else replicate that kind of behavior though, so I have no idea how they did that. Also, correction, I think Poe, when you use GPT-4 on Poe, it's a separate limit. It does not count against your OpenAI limit because I was looking at it and nowhere did I give it my OpenAI account settings. So I think when you pay for Poe, they give you a little bit of access to GPT-4 and it's 600 requests per month and 1 per day, apparently. That seems wrong.
I think 1 per day is on the free plan. I think you get 600 when you pay for it.
Okay, yeah.
And then Stuart?
Hey, yeah, so nice to see you again. So yeah, I'm trying to, also is my mic okay, or is this really loud?
Yeah.
I can't tell. Cool, okay. So I read that from week 2, or last week, you guys, had that prompt engineering paper, which I thought was pretty interesting. And so for determining, a sort of passion project to go along with this AI summer course, it seemed like the flipped interaction pattern would be, pretty useful for, deriving some cool project ideas from ChatGPT, partially because, I don't really know, like I have a broad idea in mind, but I don't really, know. So I thought that'd be kind of interesting. And so after reading that, I was able to think of this prompt, which I will paste in chat. And now I'm still at the point where it is asking me questions about myself. But in your, knowledge and experience with prompt engineering, I was just wondering what you thought of my question. If you had, any more suggestions, things I should, add to this prompt or kind of clarify. But yeah, okay, I just put it in chat there.
So just right off the bat, Chat GPT. So are you using Chat GPT?
I'm using the Bing search guy, which I think is like ChatGPT 4.
Yeah, okay. I would just make sure sometimes it doesn't like know about LangChain, but I think Bing might probably be better at that. So I was just going to warn you if you're using ChatGPT that it will not really know about LangChain.
Okay, and let's say that Bing search does not know about LangChain. How would you suggest I, give it an up-to-date spiel about what that technology is? Should I like maybe link what LangChain is, like the docs to LangChain in the prompt, or?
So I'm unaware if Bing lets you upload documents. Does anyone know that? But we also like tried to kind of make our own little LangChain bot, Umang and I, and we have one, but also LangChain has their own on their website, but it's probably not what you want for this.
Well, I'm just trying to say that I'm trying to convey that I would like to have LangChain be, a part of whatever this project is.
Yeah, I would say that it just, and I don't know this for a fact, my caveat is that it may not give you specifics about LangChain, but it can definitely give you a problem to solve. And so if anyone has other things to say about this, I just didn't want you to expect it to say, use this part of LangChain to do this, because it probably won't be too good at that, but it can definitely give you a problem to solve. So if anyone else has something.
Yeah, and
No, go ahead.
also I do not think GPT-4 or ChatGPT know anything about AutoGPT or LangChain, because those things were created post the development of GPT-4.
So AutoGPT and LangChain are just mean nothing to it in this prompt.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, okay, that makes sense. Is there a way that I could have them mean something?
So the best way to do it would be to essentially give GPT-4 or ChatGPT all the documentation on LangChain or AutoGPT. So we do have a Hugging Face bot that has information on LangChain. So essentially what we did was we grabbed all the LangChain documentation from a couple versions ago and gave it to like a document store. And using LangChain, we developed a LangChain specific bot for GPT-4. So you can ask questions off of that bot about LangChain, but not AutoGPT. So you could do the same thing for AutoGPT as well, or you can, augment that existing bot with information with AutoGPT. So you'd need to use LangChain in order to allow GPT-4 to tell you about LangChain.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. It's kind of a project in itself to do that. So like, you're not going to get specific instructions about LangChain without making that yourself. So is there a way to give the Bing chat or whatever chat you're using information about LangChain and then have it tell you what to do? No. You basically, if you want that to be your project, there you go.
That could be a project. That could be a project.
I would also say that this one prompt is really not the end all be all. It's not like that's your one thing that you get and then like it's done. Like even when you're interacting with Bing, like this is just the beginning of like the conversation, and so you can keep asking it like about stuff. You actually, I mean, for any of those things, like you don't actually have to directly reference them if you don't want to. And sometimes you can like, I don't know, you can just think about what it's saying and just determine whether it uses, or it could be implemented using LangChain or AutoGPT.
I would just say that it's like, yes, no, I fully agree. And I get what you guys are saying. Though I think just with this prompt to clarify, like I'm ultimately just trying to have it give me, project ideas that, I could use LangChain and AutoGPT to solve. Like it doesn't necessarily have to tell me how I should solve them and
It'll
how I should implement those
still,
technologies.
yeah, it'll still need to know what LangChain is. So what you could
Right.
potentially do is somehow get a very well detailed summary of what LangChain and AutoGPT is, but then again, you'll keep running into issues like it not knowing if something is possible through LangChain, because LangChain is extremely extensive. You could spend several months just studying LangChain and the variety of things it could do, and they keep saying things onto it because actually it's a tool that allows you to interact with all sorts of APIs, Wikipedia API, Wolfram Alpha API, Google search APIs. So the best way to really go about it would be to either give it the specific documentation or or wait for GPT-4 to know about LangChain.
Yeah, or as Sharo was saying, you can just keep it tool agnostic. Like don't say I want to increase my understanding of prompt engineering, LangChain, and AutoGPT. Just say, help me, come up with project ideas for using large language models, or what could a large language model do in this area, something like that. Like don't give it the tools that you want to use, because that might add some confusion, but just keep it tool agnostic. And then like you were saying, say, then you're going to apply LangChain to that problem. And then you don't have to worry about any of what we just described.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I like that. And as it sounds like, again, LangChain is so expansive that it would be easy to, implement it if I really wanted to.
I would also say, like, you could probably just sit down and think about what annoys you in your daily life every single day. Like, if you are like, you sit down, and you're like, I am so sick and tired of blah, blah, blah. Like, as long as it's some software-based thing, like that's something that you could probably use a large language model and something like LangChain to like help you with. Like right now, like I would say something around, like for me, I would say something around like emails or something about like scheduling or something like that. Maybe like you have something around, I don't know, productivity or I don't know, whatever have you. But I think if you sit down and like just think about, or the things that annoy you, like in your classes when you have to go and blah, 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 like just fill in the blah, blah, blah. That sounds like perfect.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. No, I like that. So it sounds like this can really be applied to solving any problem. Cool. Okay. And I think, okay, it makes a lot of sense why I wouldn't, reference the exact tools. But I did read that, in general, like, the more specific the prompt is regarding like constraints and information to collect, the better the outcome. Obviously, that's pretty intuitive. But I guess, for this, it makes sense to, withhold stuff if it's like, obviously, if it means nothing to the model. Cool. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. You've given me a lot to think about and a lot of good suggestions. And I look forward to giving you an update on Wednesday. So I really appreciate it.
Forward to hearing it. See you.
Yep. Have a great day, guys.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, I'm going to hop off, but I will see you later today.
I think I will too. Bye. Thanks everybody for coming. Omar, do you have a quick burning question?
For the data science minor, how does it work?
Oh, how does it work? How does it work? Sort of what? In what sense?
So in terms of the classes you take, are they mostly computer science classes?
Okay, so I sent a link, so definitely not, but I sent a link to the requirements for the minor. Generally, there are 6 requirements, and it's 19 credit hours in total. The S1000 is just going to be an introductory course. It'll give you a grand understanding, a grand overview of data science. Then, of course, you have a programming course, which is currently cross-listed with CS, but its purpose is not meant to be, its purpose is really meant for everyone. And then we have a statistics course, of course, of course. And then fundamentals, which is a 4-credit-hour course, generally in R, and it's very much to teach fundamentals of data science, visualization, analytics on the whole. And then a machine learning course, which is also cross-listed with CS, but this particular course, DS 3262, is meant to be accessible for everyone. So machine learning essentially for everyone. And then of course you have your final elective, which you do in your discipline of interest. So it's definitely not all computer science, and even the computer science that we have is geared towards educating a wide swath of disciplines, even people who don't really have like backgrounds in like programming or just like a bunch of mathematical backgrounds. Data science is for everyone. You want to make it so.
Data science looks interesting. I'm thinking of minoring in it.
It's awesome. I will always recommend. There are lots of new electives coming out as well that are just like the coolest. And so definitely recommend. That's interesting. All right, I think we're getting here to the end of our time. Thank y'all for coming, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.